I'm Greg Jones, and this is The Capital Machine, where execution friction becomes strategic growth.
Hello and welcome. And today we are with Dan Woods, and he is with Evolved Media, and we're going to ask him some questions and hear a little bit about his story and what he's working on today. So, welcome, Dan.
Hey, how are you, Greg?
Good, very good. Thank you. So, let's just jump right in. Take me back to your early days at Time or some of your other companies after that. What moment challenged and sparked the idea behind Evolved Media? And what
Well,
drove you to this mission in founder-led marketing?
the original kind of origin story was that I had finished doing two tours as a CTO of startups, one at thestreet.com, one called Capital Thinking. And I was just about to turn 40, and I realized if I'm going to start a business of myself, I have to do it now. And I thought, how can I combine technology and journalism? So I pitched a bunch of book ideas to O'Reilly Associates and a bunch of other publishers.
Right.
They got back to me, and I finally networked my way to their number two guy, a guy named Dale Doherty, who's a really super smart, interesting person. And he looked at my book ideas and he said, 5 of these book ideas are for IT managers. Forget about them. IT managers don't buy books. One is interesting, open source for the enterprise is what the book was, and we eventually wrote that. But before you do that, we have another challenge, and that is SAP was arriving in Silicon Valley, led by Shai Agassi, his company had been acquired by them, and he became a dynamic force in the company. And they were trying to move from their German roots into becoming more of a truly international company. And they asked me to write 2 books. And so they wanted 175-page books done in 3 months. And when I started writing them, I was very well equipped to do the research because I understood IT, I understood tech. And what the books were about was service-oriented architecture, their version of it, which they called enterprise services architecture. So I started writing the books, and I used a journalistic approach, and I realized I had to write 3.6 finished pages a day. Otherwise, I couldn't get them done fast enough. And in doing that, I realized there was no way that I could ever have a business if I had to do all the writing. And so that led to the division of labor between what I call the editor analyst, the person who understands and figures out the structure of the content and does the interviews, and then the writer and the other people who support the writing, who actually take structured transcripts and then use an outline with those structured transcripts to create first drafts. And it was that division of labor that really was the founding moment when I realized I had to combine both what I learned in newsrooms and what I learned in software development into this new synthesis. And then since then, that's powered hundreds of white papers, more than 30 books, all where I could work on multiple projects at a time and have other people who played the role of the editor analyst work on multiple projects at a time. So it made high quality, deep content creation scalable. And that powered our business and still powers our business.
That's awesome. That's a great approach to divide and conquer like that. And so with that, so you've got these additional writers that are supporting you. Can you share a leadership story from those early days that shapes how you lead in Evolved Media with these kind of extended writers that you bring on board?
The thing that you have to do is there has to be a balance between the virtuosity of each individual and also the preparation. And you want to, and all of that behavioral economics and everything, it describes how if you prepare well, you can then use your intuition much more effectively. And so what I try to do is I try to make sure that my writers are prepared really exhaustively well with the context and the whole surrounding story that they're trying to tell, so that then when they get those transcripts, get that outline, they can actually use their creativity to create a new story. And it's that which creates this kind of really high quality product. And without that, people are trying to rewrite transcripts instead of crafting a new way of telling a story. And it just never works out. So I think preparing, but then respecting and expecting their virtuosity to be engaged is really important.
What's a typical timeline for a project, given this kind of structure with writers?
We can, once we get to know somebody, we can do a nice white paper in 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
We can do books in 4 to 6 months. But that's after they understand our process and we understand them. The things that get in the way of that are when people try to over edit, copy, because a lot of the line edits and things like that, once you have a good core, good communication down, line editing and polishing doesn't really help the process that much. You have to get to a point where it's like there was a concept in when the cloud started up that your servers should be like cattle. They should be like a herd of servers, not like pets, like very carefully taking care of pets. And so content, if you're going to do it at scale in a tech company, has to be like cattle. And that's not to say it can't be, it's crappy, but the idea is consistency over time with the same message, not each thing being a poem they pour over. And that requires trust. When you get there, it makes content creation into a lower touch process, which is really important.
Yeah, I think that's a great approach. I think that also applies to some new and current multi-agent systems. You have to get out of that over-analysis phase and let it do its thing once you properly give it the instructions. So, now, when you first pitched founder-led marketing, did you face skepticism? And tell me about a key win that you had that kind of turned it around for you and really set you on the path of success.
Founder-led marketing is a new name for something that's been going on for a long time. And it's a good name. And it represents a certain kind of virtuoso process. In most of the stars of founder-led marketing are people who have gone on a hero's journey of learning what they want to talk about, creating a content strategy where they can find some tension in the story they're telling. Usually it's about telling something that defies the conventional wisdom but is true. They don't want to write just a conventional wisdom. Nobody wants to hear that. They don't want to write crazy ideas that are too far out there. Nobody wants to hear that. They want to write things that are true but are defying what people already believe. Then they learn how to write hooks to make those stories really engaging. And most of the people like Adam Robinson or Gal Aga of Aligned, they have gone through this hero journey. And for them, founder-led marketing is a virtuoso activity. My view is that founder-led marketing can be a team sport. And so it not only can be a sport in which writers like us can support an executive or founder, but it also can be a sport in which the founder-led marketing supports more internal processes such as messaging experimentation and messaging enablement, sales enablement, and a variety of alignment activities that bring everybody together. And so the typical founder-led marketing is about creating a community outside, which is always important in the soul of founder-led marketing, but you can do more of that. And also you can have more people involved. So that idea of making it a team sport is sometimes unusual to people who see founder-led marketing as something that is about making a cult of personality. And it's not, that doesn't work. That's worked very well. But the story that I wanted to tell was one about Hasso Plattner, the chairman of SAP. When he was CEO and elevating to chairman, we did a book for him, which was an imitation of an academic thing called a Festschrift. And a Festschrift is at the end of an academic's career, they celebrate the academic's career by everybody in the field writes something where they express their views about the importance of that person's work. Well, we did that for Hasso Plattner. We did a book where we interviewed all the people in the tech and IT world about what he had accomplished at SAP. And that was a great asset because it really captured not only his founder perspective, but also his impact on the entire world. And this is years ago before founder-led marketing was a thing, but it was a great example of a founder-led sort of project, a founder-led asset.
That's fascinating. Now, how many projects like that do you typically have that you're working on? Or do
Well,
you do
we've
one?
done more than 35 books, and we're also usually working on, I'd say, 5 to 6 clients at a time with varying levels of engagement. It's not uncommon for us to be in 2 or 3 books and then
Right,
have
right,
other
right.
streams of content as well. With the founder-led marketing engagements, I'm shooting for a portfolio of 5 to 7 clients. That would be the optimal that would provide us
And
the
how big
ability to
is
have
your
a
team
stable
that
book of
has to
business and
support
then
that?
also to be
Right.
replacing, having people come off and come on.
How big of a team do you have to support that?
I could support that with a team of 5 to 7 people.
That's impressive. That's pretty impressive. Yeah. That shows a lot of maturity in your process and methodology.
Yeah, we can reduce the founder's input to after we understand the messaging and understand the context in which they're working and then have gotten to know them. We can meet with a founder an hour a week and keep 2 really good posts
Right.
going. Eventually we can get to 3 and also reacting to various other social media activities. And then eventually the whole idea of this is you want to be not just doing post. You want to be learning something
Right.
and adding that up into bigger, more impactful content. So we never stop content marketing, even though we do founder-led marketing. We always are looking for that great asset that can be transformational. Because I think that, those pieces of content, you don't like, just like people don't know which movies are going to be a hit. You don't know
Right.
which kind of white paper or story is going to be a hit. But that's a really powerful thing when you get that.
Now, why would a CMO or executive or founder that you're going to work with choose you over an in-house team or an external team? And what unique value does Evolve Marketing bring?
Vol Media has some really good advantages. When you look at the way founder-led marketing is presented by most people who do it or most agencies who support it, there is this strong emphasis on the virtuosity of the founder. People
Right.
say the founders have to write, the founders have to learn how to do, as I said, the content. They have to learn what they're going to teach. They have to learn a content strategy and they have to learn how to write hooks. That's a
Right.
lot. And usually they say that they learned it over daily posting over 9 months. That's a real tall order. And so one of the reasons we can succeed is that now the playbook for founder-led marketing is no longer a mystery. It's just about executing. But going back to what we talked about in the prep call, we are actually able to listen to a founder and understand what they know and what they say, and then
Right.
write accurately versions in the same style that's natural to them of
That's
what they want to get across. And most people in the founder-led marketing agency world can't do that because they weren't IT executives, they weren't CTOs, they haven't been writing about a wide variety of technology for these years. And so they often downplay the kind of idea of ghostwriting the executive in a value-added way. Now, in terms of an internal team, usually inside companies, when people become good writers, they are often, I've seen situations where a sales enablement person, all of a sudden is a writer and then they start writing. Usually they're promoted into product marketing pretty
right.
quickly. We're
Hmm.
focused on content creation and we're focused on managing that content portfolio and managing content in a way that's really not natural. And also, we're also constantly looking outside the company as well. We're bringing in an external perspective, not
Right.
just an internal perspective. And then we're very affordable in terms of our monthly retainer is not at all hard to swallow for most people based on the
Right.
value we provide. And then
Right.
there's always a bonus to having a very tight and fast content creation loop because
Absolutely.
you end up being able to understand what works and what doesn't far more quickly, and that ends up impacting messaging and sales enablement and
Absolutely.
thought leadership. And once you get a virtuous cycle of conversation and analysis between messaging, content creation, sales enablement, you start understanding much more fast what works and what doesn't
Right.
to get the attention of customers.
How much do you see yourself and your team have to iterate and change given market changes, changes in customer perception and things like that? How much are you having to innovate to meet the new market pressures and demands?
It depends. Right now in technology marketing, it's just a really roiling sea of change. The idea is that you can't react to that roiling sea of change with a specific technology solution and expect to have any durability.
Right.
Our commitment is not to ignore technology. We use AI and all sorts of other technologies to help us. Our promise is that, one, we can help you enable your messaging so that the rest of your company understands it. Two, we can create a research and listening based process so that you can understand what you're learning and also create a listening process so the rest of the team can actually, the rest of the company can actually provide input based on what they learn. Third, we then create an integrated content strategy and an optimized content portfolio so that you can create the assets that are the most important for all of the consumers of content. And then that, what I call the newsroom for technology marketing, that process then can support a variety of use cases. Founder-led marketing is one of those use cases, but there's a variety of other ways that it can support content marketing or thought leadership programs or other content-powered activities.
That's awesome. I'm hearing a lot of flexibility and nimbleness in your approach, which I think is really important to meet the demands of today.
Yeah, I guess what I'm offering is a process that delivers messaging that everybody can understand, learning about what your company's learning, and an integrated content strategy. So technology can be underneath that, powering it, but those three things, I think, really are transformational once you get them going.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So what was your toughest client content challenge and how did you solve it? And what does that experience teach you that you adopt today in your current business?
We often sell books and we have to then figure out often what the book that they want and will actually help them. And one of the experiences of that happened with a company called Splunk, which is a company that pioneered the analysis and use of machine data. And it's been very important in the cybersecurity space, which I know you know well.
Absolutely. Yes.
And so when they started out, they were using a form of data, logs, that people didn't understand the power of. And they created a whole new way of using search, which they called their search processing language, which had a variety of characteristics that were unusual. Like they would search through and they would have to find all the records that had a certain transaction tag or a certain IP address. But then they would have to collect those by a time window. And these are all kind of crazy concepts that nobody was used to. And then you had to do that at huge volumes. And then you couldn't keep it around for that long. Because otherwise it would be overwhelmingly expensive.
Absolutely.
And so we started out writing a book, and then we had to find a way to explain that search processing language in a way that your normal person could understand. We worked with a guy named David Carasso, who was one of the early staff there who helped shape the product. Unfortunately, he died far too early, but his title was Chief Mind. And working with him, we came up with a book that actually told the story of how Splunk worked and was super important. So we started out with a vague conception of the book, but then working with everybody crystallized it into a book that played a very important role in the development of the company because it allowed them to serve many audiences with one book. They could give it to partners who understood what Splunk was doing. They could give it to people for recruiting to understood what they were doing. They could give it to analysts. They could give it to customers. And it really powered a clear explanation of the company for many years during the early stages of their growth.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah. I'm sure you have lots of good stories like that, lots of success stories. So what's another project for a client that best shows how founder-led storytelling drives real pipeline and revenue and what made it successful?
There's a variety of things that I could talk about. I think that some of the dummies books we've done,
It's a
while
popular brand.
they're not classic founder-led marketing, they ended up being an example of a founder telling a complete story. We worked with a great founder who had been bought by Netscope, who had a borderless wireless wide area network product. And we created a dummies book about that concept. And that the founder was extremely precise about his language, about how they wanted to tell the story. And so what we ended up doing is capturing this, not just the, PowerPoint presentation level, but this really deep and complete explanation of what the whole product was about, why it was important. And it ended up being a really successful asset. So while like in the modern founder-led paradigm, that would have been spooled out in a bunch of LinkedIn posts. In this case, it was created in a For Dummies book that ended up having really tremendous impact by helping tell a complete story. Now, this is, of course, not a top of the funnel asset. If we had been able to do it as a LinkedIn program, we could have created a community around that content. But instead, we did it as a dummies book, and it ended up being a very powerful lead generation asset. But it was all powered by this one founder's clear vision of what they wanted to say.
I would assume that's a pretty predictive formula for you that you find in a lot of scenarios. And I think it depends on where they're coming in, like you mentioned, in the funnel. Some people are at the top of the funnel, and then some people are coming midstream, like the dummies book. What was a moment when you, go ahead.
No, go ahead. It's fine.
Yeah. What was a moment when you questioned your choice to pivot to founder-led marketing? And how did you push through that? And how does that shape you today?
I think that when I first heard about founder-led marketing, I was very excited about it because it was a way for us to change one important aspect of our agency. For 20 years, we've mostly been providing content to our customers, and our best customers were those who had mature content marketing processes. And so what our role was to create a breakthrough of a bottleneck, which was high quality content to put into those content marketing processes.
Right.
I love founder-led marketing because it allowed us to now be the ones powering a value creating marketing process, and one that can have tremendous impact. So no longer were we separated from the results of the impact of our content. What happened was I studied founder-led marketing, and I found that most of the people who were doing it and celebrating it were talking about these rules of founder-led marketing that didn't make sense to me. The rules, as I said earlier, was that the founder had to be the virtuoso. The founder had to learn and do all the writing. They could get help with editing and stuff, but it was all this cult of personalities, this focus on the founder being the one doing this heroic thing. And the ones that have succeeded have been like that. What I realized is, no, there can be a different model where you can achieve the same results, you can run the same process, but because we could actually do the ghostwriting and the analysis and the message enablement and all the other things, we can actually power this in a different way. So I don't think it's a different thing. It's really the same thing. It's just that we're powering it with a different content engine. Now, what's different is when we start talking about powering internal processes and actually helping with messaging, helping with sales enablement, helping with other content needs, using our technology newsroom approach and bringing more people in the company in. That's different because in order to do that, you have to have that newsroom approach. And that's running a founder-led marketing program with a technology marketing newsroom is, I guess, what we do. And that's how we can serve more needs. And so that's a little bit different than traditional founder-led marketing. And there's a bunch of people out there that do founder-led marketing that also add something that we don't do, which is they add promotion via LinkedIn ads and via other kind of outbound systems. We think that that's a great idea to do because all of founder-led marketing is about figuring out what's important and what resonates. And then these companies, they figure out what's important and what resonates, and then they amplify it using paid media. To me, the most important game is that process of figuring out what your story is, figuring out your voice, figuring out your content strategy and what resonates. And then if you want to use paid media, that's a great idea, but that's not what we're about. We're about that core thing.
Getting that clarity and getting that messaging down. Yeah. So scaling a boutique agency is tricky. So can you share a story about a time where you scaled team meeting, but fought hard to keep the quality intact?
Yeah, the worst examples of our team writing process going astray is when we don't actually capture the story with enough clarity with our writer, with our client, and then the research isn't structured enough. And so the idea of the process is that the writer doesn't have to make decisions about what's important. If you give any new journalistic writer like 5 press releases about the same thing, they'll be able to come back with an organized and usually insightful story about that because they almost interpolate what's going on in all that content and then can find a story in there. But if you don't give them guidance about what's important, they don't know the tech, they don't know the industry context. And so they won't be able to make those decisions. And so that's when it goes astray. We have a lot of processes in place to make sure that doesn't happen. But in terms of the higher scalability, it's just like LinkedIn selling or something like that. When you're talking about LinkedIn selling, about understanding people, sending DMs to them,
right,
it doesn't scale. You can't do a good job of LinkedIn selling for some massively tens of thousands of prospects level. And so my agency, if I'd be happy with 5 to 7 clients, but I could probably stretch that to 10. And above that, then I need to think of a new approach, or we're just replicating the whole model in with different smaller teams. It's in Ann Arbor, there's a deli called Zingerman's, and it's done very well as a food operation. And when they're often asked, why aren't you national? And they say, we're not national because we can't keep it all working with high quality the way we want to if we were in every Kroger. Right now, they have a process where they train their cheesemongers, and they know their cheesemongers and the people who work in their stores love cheese and are trained in loving cheese. But if they scaled, they couldn't do that. We love our content like they love their cheese.
So is it the quality of the writer that's your bottleneck to scaling, finding good quality writers to support you in your founder-led approach? Or what is your bottlenecks and obstacles that you see that slow scaling?
Well, we are now able to find kind of journalists that have the tech background and also the virtuoso writing skills to be able to understand what we're doing. We are not bottlenecked there. I do believe that in the future, all of those people were trained in newsroom environments where they were writing regularly, but also, more importantly, being edited regularly. In the modern world, that idea of being edited by someone who's helping make your writing better is really not very easy to find. Now, it's not that AI can't do editing, but it's a lot different than you talking with another human being about what you're trying to do as a writer, how you're trying to make it better. And so I think that there's going to be a need for kind of a writing education so that we can train the people we need to be writers, because it doesn't matter how AI enabled a lot of things are. You do need to be able to, the idea of writing is not just making sentences. It's about achieving a purpose with content. And that's the heyday of Time magazine was about great writing, but it was about informing and educating and entertaining. The sentences were being made to do those objectives. In the modern technology marketing realm, it's the same thing. Everybody in technology hates marketing,
Right.
but everybody loves education. How can you make educating people about a really cool idea that you have fun and entertaining? Making good sentences is part of that, but the job of the writer is to achieve those outcomes. And I think that if you look at the career of somebody like Ridley Scott,
Right.
how many different types of movies he's done, but some of them super high tech and special effects, and others like Wag the Dog, super simple, but they all have this special, zany, fascinating quality to them all. And so I think each of our writers will become people who have brands to achieve outcomes in a certain style.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned AI. I know in my work, and I see it in a lot of my peers, AI is really shaping how they do their job, how their customers are wanting to accomplish their goals. Tell me how AI has surprised you for good or bad, and how is it shaping your business and your processes?
It's a tremendous, from a founder-led marketing point of view, it's a tremendous lever because so much information is on YouTube, so much information you can gather from internal recorded documents and turn all those into transcripts and then use AI to distill things and to distill from vast collections of information specific answers to specific questions. And it's really tremendous in being able to distill things. And also, if you have a large body of content that is very well organized and very high quality, you can then create derivative assets from it very quickly. But the thing is, AI goes downhill from a mountain of really well constructed content. It doesn't go uphill to create that mountain. And also, yes, you can organize a bunch of content into a higher level of organization, but is that higher level organization actually the messaging that will resonate with your clients? Creating that mountain of content that is on message and proven effective and meets everybody's needs, then you can then go from that mountain of content downhill to more different derivative assets tremendously well with AI. And then if the mountain is in good shape, the knowledge base or whatever you want to call it, then you're doing well. But then also just and then if you have a vision about what it is you want to get from a bunch of content, AI can accelerate you distilling it. And then every once in a while I'll write an article and then I'll go back and I'll ask AI to write that same article. And I often find a phrase or two that it creates that are really useful and very good. And or the style of a lot of the AI tends to these paragraphs and bullet points and things like that. But you may find a few bullet points or a couple of them that are useful to incorporate.
A few nuggets, yeah.
Yeah. And we've all seen the beginning of a series on Netflix or some streaming platform, and we watch the first episode, the second episode, and then for some reason we just don't want to watch the rest of it. And so I think that writers are going to be tasked to present things in a way that we want to finish the whole series. We're compelled to do that.
Yeah.
And that's different from just making sentences, as I said.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely more than that. And so looking at the next 12 to 18 months, if you look at the impact that you want to have on your clients or future clients, if you had unlimited resources, what would you be investing in right now in order to magnify and compound the impact on those clients?
I think that in a way, even though it's very successful for founder-led marketing, I think written content in the long run is going to become a middle of the funnel asset. And I think that visual content is really going to be something that's important, but in a B2B tech marketing context, that visual content needs to have in it some representation of the sophistication of the story that you are wanting to tell in a longer form content.
Right.
And so how do you say, here's my hook, I got your attention, here's this important fact that you want to know, and here's a world that I can teach you about that I think you want to know about. how can you do that quickly and then represent that world? And so I believe that creating explicit models of content that can be either expressed visually or in interactive form, and then can power lower cost, high quality visual representations of those models, I think that's going to be really important. So I would, if somebody wanted to hand me $50,000 to play with, I would create a visual model of a specific domain, like the one I'm working on now in my spare time is posture management. And I would just create a visual, very detailed model so that you could go from those Lumascape badges, like charts of logos,
right?
And all the logos are in one, or are in a large like graphic, and with each logo in each category. Imagine if you could click on the category and see all of a sudden the basic structure of the category and how all the logos were the same but different. And then boom, click on a logo and then see how it worked. And then now you could have a conversation with somebody like you and let's say, what's wrong with posture management? And we could go, okay, here's this chart of logos, but there's a missing category over here that would do these things.
Right.
Or inside, say, data security posture management. Everybody's doing this, everybody's doing that, but what about X, Y, and Z? And so you could have a conversation in which you dived around. And so that idea I'm very excited about.
Oh, that's very cool. That's all the major questions I have. But one last final question is, you've written, 30 books, you said? Any more books in the works that you're coming out with? Or are you?
I'm starting to write books that are less tech oriented for my own personal satisfaction.
Okay.
And
anything on the radar you want to?
And the one book I'm writing that's tech oriented, and I'm doing it using a founder-led marketing approach.
Oh, nice.
Is the analogy between theater and the way theater productions are coming together and the way that tech marketing can learn from there. And so the idea is that tech marketing is a highly collaborative process where people are trying to actually say the words from the messaging, which is like the script. They're trying to be effective actors in that they want to know their motivation. They want to know the motivation of their other characters, the ICPs that you have out there. And then it's more like improv, because instead of just reading the same script over and over, which maybe they start at the beginning of a sales meeting doing, they then go and have to, as they learn more about the client, be an improv artist, but also be an improv artist within the guidance of the messaging. And so I think there's a lot to be learned about how theater works and what we can learn from that in technology marketing.
Excellent.
Because the way that directors work with actors, the way that actors understand characters, the way that everybody has to get on the same page. We don't have the concept of a director in a technology company, but we really need one. Whose job is it to make sure that everybody understands the messaging?
Absolutely.
We don't have that. Product marketing often has that desire, but they don't have the authority to actually go and insist that everybody do the work. And then product marketing often doesn't create a big enough explanation of the messaging so that it's possible to understand it deeply. You get this distilled small messaging document where the ICPs are not fully fleshed out, where it's very cryptic. The people who put that together do know what they're talking about. They do know how, but it's not communicated to the rest of the company. I think that theater, we could learn a lot from how to stay aligned, how to improve things, how to learn from the virtuosity of everybody. Because in most theater productions, the actors are a creative force. They're not just being told what to do. Right. They're being asked how to convey the character. And the salespeople should be that way. The social media people should be that way. They should be not just receiving the messaging. They should be actually commenting on and helping make it better. Absolutely. So that's the tech book I'm working on.
That's great. That's right in alignment with the type of stuff that I'm working on. And aligns with what I think the market needs right now, is this kind of unification and the producer and director, like you're mentioning. And with strategic growth architecture, what I'm embalming follows a lot of the same principles. And so I'm excited to see that. What's your timeline on having that to market?
Well, I'm trying to write at least one story every week. And I think after I do 10 or 12 weeks, I'll probably be able to distill it into you never blog yourself to a book. What you do is you blog yourself to a bathtub full, then you distill and find out what's missing, and then you reorganize it. And then so it'll probably take another 10 or 12 weeks to finish it off.
That's exciting stuff, Dan. I appreciate your time, and thank you for taking time to share with me and our viewers and listeners. And I wish you the best in your ventures. And I'm sure there are lots of founders out there that would definitely be able to benefit from you and what you have to offer.
Greg, I really appreciate your time, and it's always good to talk to an old hand at cybersecurity. And
thank you.
Good luck to you.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it, Dan. Take care.
Bye-bye.
I'm Greg Jones. Thanks for joining The Capital Machine. Full transcripts and frameworks at thecapitalmachine.com. For direct access, gregory.jonesaprimsec.com. See you next week.